Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the legislature and the governor just passed a $2.3 billion roads, bridges, and mass transit bill. It's now law. There's some aspects of this that we think you need to know about that could be considerably important in your life. And then what's call before you dig? What does that mean to your health and your safety? We've got a couple of great guests that are going to talk about that and some other aspects of energy. All of that follows, guess what? These words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, well, look, we're going to get into some of the details of this roads, bridges, and now I know you might think, oh, gosh, you know, roads, bridges, and mass transit. We've done a whole bunch of shows on that, but there are aspects to this law that was passed that's going to affect you right where you live in ways that you may not even be aware. That's why we have Bob Latham, the Executive VP with the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors, and Dave Taylor, he's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, here because they're going to help. You're going to help me. You're going to explain this, right?
We'll try.
But you know what? No,
go ahead.
I don't worry about that. What's fascinating about this, Bob, is that I don't think a lot of people are much aware of what you're going to talk about.
Well, the thing is, Terry, the good thing about this is it's for the first time we've shown in a number of years that Harrisburg can function. The government and the state government, unlike Washington, can get big things done, big core functions of government done, and this is one. This is the first time we've done a system-wide, multimodal, that's all different ways of travel, personal through moving commerce bill, and this is going to impact everybody very positively. The first thing that you need to know about this is we think about PennDOT and we think about public transit in our urban areas, but everybody travels on local roads because you got to get to your house at some point, whether you're on a bus or whether you're in your own car. So that your local government, your borough or your township is going to be able to get a lot more money to help fix your local roads, and that will have a positive effect on property taxes because that's how they fund that.
And I'll tell you, that's where you see a lot of, potholes and all sorts of other, right?
Absolutely. And I think that this is one of the most important things. There was never a question of whether consumers were going to pay more. The question is, are we going to pay more to cope with a problem, or are we going to pay more to actually fix a problem? Right. And this is one of the positive outcomes of the legislation in Harrisburg. And I want to echo Bob's point that we saw leaders of both parties coming together, and for as much as we want to praise Governor Corbett and Secretary Shoke for doing a great job, I also want to give thanks to Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, to Auditor General Eugene DePasquale, to former Governor Rendell, to former Acting Governor Singal, who were all on board.
Union and business were all, that doesn't happen often, as I like to say on this program. It's very seldom.
That's a very key point, that it was a bipartisan and a broad-based support.
All right, let's get this straight. So we know there's going to be a wholesale gasoline tax. It'll filter away through the public, and some of the critics have made that point over and over again. But you now make the point that local roads are going to benefit. Local municipalities are going to benefit, and that means that will offset taxes and/or services that local governments would deliver because, it's offsetting, so you have more money to do something else. Is that right?
That's one point, yes. Yeah. I mean, the estimates are it's going to cost the average motorist $2.50 a week. In 5 years, not when it's implemented, but 5 years from now.
Right.
So this characterization that it's going to be some massive gas tax increase that's going to be felt immediately is disingenuous. But it will, theoretically in 5 years it could cost as much as $2.50. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that as part of this, there is what is called the Multimodal Fund. I'll explain that. What that means is that's freight rail, ports, airports, etc. And that gets to our economic base, particularly our manufacturing industry, because
Yes, I mean, logistics is critical for manufacturing. That no matter what it is that you're making, you've got to get raw materials or component parts to the plant for the manufacturing process, and then you've got to have a means of delivering the manufactured good for wholesale and retail, along, of course, with getting folks to and from work. And so a failure to address this to continue to have an increasing public need based on a diminishing revenue stream would mean that not only can we not expand capacity, we can't even take proper care of what we have. So this becomes a key business competitiveness issue.
We're going to run to a break. I'll let you come in. But I just want, I mean, look, this host is, I've tried to be neutral. It's my job. But this is one issue I've had trouble being neutral on because I think the case has been so overwhelming, regardless of where you are and what you do, that this has so many dimensions to it. Safety, you know, Bob, you and I have talked about this. You just point out how important it is to the business community, and it just needed to be done. I mean, I've tried to be neutral, but some things it's hard to be neutral on. All right, where does all this go? I'm going to ask Bob Latham and Dave Taylor. We're going to talk a little bit about what's in store for the future. We'll do that after a commercial break.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation, educating citizens and business leaders about important public policy issues and civic affairs. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Roads, bridges, and mass transit, we're taking a kind of a different look at it. We've gotten into a couple of areas that personally I just was not familiar with despite all the shows that we had done on it. And now with Bob Latham and Dave Taylor, we're going to look ahead. All right, Counselor, where do we go?
What does this all mean? We've been talking about this for years. Yeah. Well, what you're going to see, what the people are going to see immediately in 2014 are safety improvements to the roads that they drive on. And what I'm talking about is we're going to be able to do better pavements, better skid resistance pavements, less accidents, improve interchanges, improve dangerous things that really at the local level. Again, we're not talking about building new freeways in a lot of places as a result of this. We're talking about taking the existing system and making it safer for you and your family to travel.
Orange barrels, is that it?
Well,
see a lot of orange barrels up.
A little bit of that. I mean, a little bit.
But it means that work is being done, and we don't you know. And again, we don't want government to hire people just for make work. But this is a core function of government, and you know, and Secretary Show put it well to say, failing to fund and to upgrade the revenue stream for transportation was going to mean layoffs in the thousands for the road construction industry. By having this funding package in place, we're going to have folks doing the work that we need to have done, and that they're going to have the work that they need.
That's a good point. Let me just follow up on that very quickly. You know, we have tremendous engineering schools in Pennsylvania, and we were going to have to start to export our best and brightest out of the state in the engineering field. Now there'll be opportunities for them to grow up in Pennsylvania, be educated here, and stay here in Pennsylvania. I think that's very important.
But the point I brought about the orange cones is that means investments are being made, that safety improvements, as you point out, are being made, and it calls for one word that I'm guilty of this. It's called patience.
I thought you were going to say that.
No, I'm serious about this. This is not an unimportant thing. When you get, I mean, you know, we have lots of replacements in the city of Lancaster where I live, and getting from my house to my work. And, you know, every now and then when I want my temperature, when, you know, I can feel it rising, I think, hold on a minute, this is important. Yes, it's another 5 minutes, but it's important, right?
Well, you make a good point. As I said earlier, we're not building new roads on new locations, so we're improving the existing ones, which means you have to take a lane here and there in order to work. We try to work around the schedules and do it on off hours, but people are traveling 24/7 now, so at some point there will be delays, and I'm going to ask motorists to slow down, save your life, and save the lives of workers out there.
And I'm going to try to remember that myself. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that certainly goes to the heart of the business community, and this was been made before and I don't think it's been made enough. A couple points made before on it. We pay now, or we pay a lot more later.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct, because as the infrastructure winds up being ground down in place, the longer that we wait to act, it becomes impossible to repair, and you have to replace. And again, the fact that over time, I mean, in real dollars, we're spending less now on our roads and bridges than we did in the 1970s when I was a kid. And so taking the way that we fund transportation, getting rid of the flat liquid fuels tax, and uncapping in stages the oil franchise tax, that will at least allow the Commonwealth to capture the rise of inflation, even as we will still be challenged by increasing motor fuel standard or vehicle CAFE standards from Washington, more and more miles with fewer and fewer gallons purchased.
Well, look, thanks for coming on, and you'll be back next year, and we're gonna, you'll keep us posted and bring us updates on the improvements, right? We're gonna,
absolutely.
We'll do that and get that done. All right, coming up, we're talking about one kind of infrastructure, but there's lots of, pipes and being replaced, outdated pipes that need to be replaced in the gas industry. You see a lot of digging going on. This is also important. There's a health and a safety issue. We're going to bring you up. We're going to bring you up to date on that and talk about a couple of other utility issues following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, joining me, as often is the case, is Terry Fitzpatrick. He's the president and CEO of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, former member of the Public Utilities Commission. He's our guy. We bring him in whenever we have energy utility subjects to talk about. And joining him is Mark Kempic. He's the president and CEO of Columbia Gas of Pennsylvania and Maryland. Terry, I'm going to, first of all, this is going to be a little unusual show, but we've often talked, Terry's been on talking about infrastructure and replacing pipes, and it's like, okay, what does that really mean? We got the guy here who's going to help explain what that really means, and why when you see utility and they're digging, and why that has to be done properly. Help me out here. What did I miss in that introduction?
No, I thought that was great. It's interesting you had got folks on just before this talking about transportation infrastructure. We have a societal issue with infrastructure, and we've talked about it many times, and natural gas pipelines are part of that. Luckily, we had a law passed in 2012 that really helps us to recover the costs of that more efficiently. And so some of the companies that are our members have programs to replace these pipes, and Columbia Gas is a great example of that. They have a great pipe replacement program to put new infrastructure.
Yeah, that's why you're here, Mark, because you've got firsthand knowledge and information that can help our viewers. All right, well, let's start out, first of all, more generically, before we get to the show and tell part, and this is pretty fascinating. Give me an overview of what your responsibilities are in this area.
Okay, sure. First off, Columbia Gas of Pennsylvania, natural gas distribution company. Right. We don't actually drill for gas, so we're not in that business line. What we do is we deliver gas from point A to a customer's house to a customer's business. We're based in Western Pennsylvania. We have 417,000 customers, primarily in the Pittsburgh region, but we also reach out to State College, and we have a very large customer base.
The show airs in Western PA and a couple of different places. Go ahead.
And we're also in York, Pennsylvania. Okay. Our second largest county is York, Pennsylvania.
That's WGAL, where you're probably maybe watching this
today,
right now. Yeah.
And I just want to start off by saying it's an honor to be with you. You have a great reputation.
Thank you. My pleasure to have you.
But just real briefly, I can talk about the history. And back in the 40s and 50s, a lot of the gas companies across Pennsylvania, not only Columbia, were really expanding dramatically. They put in pipe that looked like this, bare steel pipe. I hope you can see this.
We'll get a view of this pipe
on the camera. Bare steel pipe, put in the ground. It's nice and solid when it's brand new.
This one right here.
Right.
Looks good.
It looks good, right? It looks
wonderful.
solid, looks like it'll last forever.
Right.
Well, it lasted a long time. And this basically provided warm showers for a lot of GIs coming home from World War II, provided hot meals for a lot of people at Thanksgiving and Christmas, provided a lot of heat to a lot of young kids growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
So this is basically 50, 60 years ago when much of this was put into. I got the timing of that right?
You do have the timing right. Sometimes 70 years ago, yes. And this is what it looked like when it was brand new.
Let's slide that one out of
here. Slide that one out of there.
Slide that out
So
of here.
after providing all those years of service, the pipe looks a lot different. You'll see this pipe is corroded. This is from being in Pennsylvania soil for so many years.
So this, you can see, this would be literally in people's lawns as they run into the household now, or are they basically along the street?
This is mostly in the public right-of-way in the streets.
In the public right-of-way?
That's right.
Okay.
But
you're on the cars in those, in the trucks, right?
Right, but it's far enough down that the traffic doesn't hurt the pipe.
Okay.
But it's been there, again, for decades, for generations providing service. It just, because of Pennsylvania soils, goes through electrolysis and it starts to wear away from the soil in the ground. You don't want it to wear away because obviously you see in this pipe you had a hole here, and it's getting to the point where even though we repair a lot of leaks, it becomes more cost effective to replace the entire pipe.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
What we've done then is we started to use this new plastic pipe, this polyethylene pipe.
Can you see that pipe? Let me move this one out of the way and we'll get a good picture of that one.
We
there you go.
We started to use the new polyethylene pipe, and the great thing about this is one of the main components of this is natural gas. Mm-hmm. One of the elements that's used to make this pipe is actually the ethylene in natural gas. So because of all the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, it keeps the cost of the pipe down. We put it in the ground, and then it transports even more natural gas to consumers' homes and businesses to keep the economy moving in Pennsylvania.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, here's what I want to do. Terry, I want to ask you, who's paying for this and why is this important? And I want to ask you about this 811 number and how that works. All right, show and tell on Pennsylvania Newsmakers. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back. Well, we're talking about, I think, a very important and, in a sense, a kind of unusual subject. This is not about politics. We're talking about something very important here, infrastructure replacement. This basically has been the thrust of this program. But if this doesn't get done, I mean, we're talking about health and safety. We're talking about cost. Terry Fitzpatrick, who's paying for this? I mean, this can't be, cheap. Somebody has to be paying for this. We're talking about thousands of miles, maybe?
About 1,700 miles.
Oh, my gosh, 1,700.
For our company.
For your company alone, and there are other companies doing it, right?
That's
Go
right.
ahead.
Yeah, there's no question there's an expense to this, but it's just basically the cost of service that the utility incurs to provide service that they recover through rates paid by customers. Now, there was Act 11 of 2012 was passed, which creates more efficient means to pay for that so that the companies are allowed to recover that cost more close to the time that they make the investment, which is a real encouragement to do it. And I'll point out, too, if there's ever a good time to do this infrastructure replacement, it's now, because natural gas costs are down because of these great new finds that we have with the Marcellus. As I said last time I was on your show, compared to 5 years ago, customer bills are down 25%, which is great news, and that's while some of this investment's going on too.
That's good. All right, now there's two things I want to ask you about. One is 811 and this whole thing about call before you dig.
Right.
We didn't get to that. I've been holding that until last because I think it has a What's 811?
811 is the Pennsylvania statewide number that everyone has to call before they dig. If you're planting a mailbox, you're planting a tree, you're supposed to call so the utilities can come out and mark their lines. It's very important that you do that so that we, the gas company, can come out and say, there is a gas line here you don't want to dig, because
do this,
regardless of which pipe you have, a backhoe can just cut through that line and can cause a dangerous situation, and we can't afford to have that.
Now, it's not, would that be covered more than, just for our viewers, more than natural gas? It could be other kind of utility lines.
Sewer lines, water lines, everything is covered by 811. And we're really trying to raise awareness because, as I said, all of our lines are underground. They've been underground for generations, and people don't know they're there. They don't know where they are. So we're trying to raise awareness amongst our newer customers. So what we've done is actually created a mascot that we're introducing.
Mascot?
It's a 6-foot-tall beagle named Digger Dog, and we're going into elementary schools.
Bring that on the next time you come on, and we'll put that up here.
We thought we had enough with the show and tell.
No, I'm talking about the next time you guys come on.
We'd love to do that.
Yeah, I think that's neat. All right, now I'm going back, Mr. PUC Commissioner.
Yes.
When did you begin to realize that this was a potential problem? I mean, it's like we're hearing more and more about it. I think maybe it took time for all this to corrode and erode.
Towards the end of my term, 2006, 2007, I became aware that in my own decisions on the PUC, I was focusing more and more on the importance of getting the investments made in infrastructure, whether it's electric or water or gas. And I actually wrote a paper that tied them all together and talked about the transportation system too, and it became clear to me, really there's a societal issue here that we need to pay more for infrastructure and invest more there.
Yeah. Now, look, moving ahead, what are we looking at in terms of time to get this done? I mean, the roads and bridge and mass transit proposals that we talked about, you know, with Bob Latham over the years, you know, he's been our kind of Terry Fitzpatrick, the expert that we bring in to do that. I mean, this is not something we're going to do in a year or 2 or 3. We're looking at a decade and perhaps even longer.
Right. For Columbia Gas of Pennsylvania, we started in 2007, and since that time we've invested over $500 million in replacement pipe. We have about another 16 or 17 years to go, and then we'll replace all 1,600 or 1,700 miles of pipe across Pennsylvania.
Now, broaden that out just to a bigger picture in the state, as you see. I mean, translate Columbia Gas into the rest of the state. Where did we stand with that?
Well, it's going to vary by utility depending how much of this pipe they have in the ground. And urban areas tend to have more of the old pipe just because the system started there earlier. So that's Columbia's proposal. That's their program for how soon it's going to take. It'll take longer in some other areas because there's just more of the pipe. And paying for it is expensive. And just the logistics of replacing all of it, especially in a city. It's more complicated in the city.
Yeah, we have about 35 seconds. And I just want to make sure, but this is universal across the entire state. You can both nod. Is that true? Universal.
Well, it's in the Northeast. It's really broader even than the state.
In the Northeast.
Yes.
All right. Great update. This was pretty important. All right. Look, you all have a happy New Year. That's coming up, and stay well. And we'll see you after the New Year.